This is a finance-focused reporting and management for education institutions. So let's just kick off. Okay, just an introduction about who we're talking to. So I'm working for Fusion 5, who's an IT solutions provider. So we're very much in the field of looking within specific industries and really getting to know them and finding solutions using a range of partner software that's available globally. And so we're going to be looking at one of those solutions today, but very much geared towards how we would use it within education institutions. And I believe that this is quite unique, the solution we're seeing today. I don't think there's anywhere around where you'll find the same solution for education within this sort of context. So my name's Phil Taphouse, so I'm the practice manager here of our CPM, Corporate Performance Management Practice, and I create these solutions and help make sure we align with what you've got. The process I'm looking to address here is geared around your enrolments and the funding, the bodies, and the different mix of revenue types you get between international, domestic, and also bringing in how staff interplay with this, our capacity within the staff. So generally, we're finding that education institutions have to be fit within guardrails with which the funding institutions will make you achieve your quota of funding, that you agree with them. And also, we want to make sure that we get a desirable mix of student course types and minimize unfilled places. So we need to have a real early warning aspect of how these are going. There's also a lack of insight by finance into the drivers. They generally will sit on their general ledger without having the impact of changes happening within like the CRMs and so on. And also we want finance to be in a position where they can provide business insights to the operations departments and say, this is what you need to do. We need to really get marketing on this area. We need to try to leverage in this mix or this type of student. And also we're going to talk today about that we know that you really want to be strategic, and this tool allows you to combine a strategic and an operational capability and be able to blend both. So that's partly why we're here, but just getting into the detail now a bit more, and we need to be able to reforecast on demand our financial position, and this has generally been a big issue for finance. It takes a long time to get the spreadsheets organized and to get the latest data in. So this is what we're going to see today is an on-demand solution, real time, which will be refreshed by the latest actuals. And this model will give both financial and operational views. And what we're trying to do is combine and correlate your operational volumes, like enrollments, and the rates and the mix of courses and student types, which drive our different types of revenue, and make sure you optimize that. That's one of the challenges. And it is a solution about for finance being built for them and owned without having to leave out to IT. And we're going to be using a tool called Adaptive Insights Business Planning Cloud for that. And just a quick one slider on this, just so we know what we're looking at. We can see here in the middle, we're looking at a cloud, a multi-tenant in-memory database, which has modeling, reporting, and analytics capabilities. So I want you to not think a BI solution, because this is a modeling solution, and it has forecasting and budgeting features, enabling you to cut versions and forecast with rules into it and pull in data from any source. And you can see there how we interact with the different parts, the workforce, the sales, the operational and finance, to pull all this together into a platform which we can get a clear reporting view on. What we're going to look at in this model is a planning cycle. So I just want to orientate you with the timing. So we're looking at a January to December year. Now yours might be different, of course, and this is trimesters, it could be semesters, but in this example, we're looking at January 19 start. So we're kind of at that right at the beginning before trimester one, planning for the coming trimester and coming year. And then through the model, we're going to move into this mid-trimester forecast around about March, where we'll pull in actuals, from all the enrollments from trimester one, and then we can start preparing for trimester 2 and 3 as they go on. So we're going to rerun a forecast, we're going to refresh actuals from your CRMs, SMSs, and so on. And again, I suppose this really relates to what you're trying to achieve. And I am looking at this orange here, that we're trying to coordinate strategic top-down and bottom-up planning into a single solution. And that's why I think this is quite unique, because in here you'll see how we can set very high level drivers, that's business drivers that executives might want to flex to get the right mix of what they want, and then we can set those targets, and then right down at the course level we can start pulling in the data and just seeing how we're tracking with those mixes and so on. So we're looking at this high level target top down setting here with the targets agreed with the funding bodies, and then we're doing this bottom up reconciling and then monitoring against that plan with the latest actuals that comes through. And all of that is done within this correction around being able to flex our drivers and within the constraints of our resources, and being able to monitor the pipeline. And architecturally, the model we're looking at has this style here. It's just basically showing us how up in Adaptive Insights, we've got a finance model, P&L, balance sheet, cash flow, but we're also pulling in all the drivers from HR, from student management systems around the progress of applications and enrollments, and in CRMs where the website hits. So some of you might have a whole number of systems. So the idea here is to really harmonize and pull that into a structure in here, which we can really, regardless of the source system, we can just refresh and get good reporting out of it. What you're looking at now, a modeling tool, as we said before, and I'm just going to give you an overview of the model we've got in this system. So this is one we've built for education within a platform called Adaptive Insight. So it means that we've kind of set the bar up early to begin with, so that you're able to have a great starting point and use this to align your process to. So it's not saying this is yours, but it's just gives you a framework to go to. So first of all, this model here, we can see we've got the GL, which we'll talk about later. We've got certain assumptions that we're holding, and we're holding what in this custom area, we're holding many sorts of non-financial accounts in there. Up here, we've got your income statement. So we're not looking at balance sheet and cash flow at this stage, but that's definitely what we would anticipate coming on. And what we have in the yellow boxes is the underlying models, which are where the drivers are held. So these drivers have drivers and rates and volumes and calculations, which drive a P&L statement from the latest numbers coming in, and pulling in various rates and assumptions within there. We're going to look at, first of all, this is the core driver, because this is where the volumes are and the rates are stored, and then calculating the revenue which goes in. But let's look at this model here and start from these assumptions and see, well, we've got assumptions which are just like Excel. We can put in assumptions which will drive us an answer. And here are some of the sort of conversion rate assumptions, percent of students returning after the first trimester or from a year away, or withdrawal rates. So you can see we've got a whole lot of factors which impact what our enrollments and forecasts are going to be. So we can set assumptions up and test those. We can also see, if I click on this one here, we have a rate or funding rate lookup, which allows us, rates TECs, TEC is a New Zealand body for tertiary education committing, and this is based on this course type and student type, what they'll get in. And we also have the student fees here, you can just see there that are coming in. So this is the rates holding a lookup on there, and if I just double click that, you can see how we're holding this at dimensions of student type and course category, and we're holding a funding rate and also a student rate, which feeds into our enrollments and enables us to calculate. And in our enrollments cube, you can see again, we're holding student type and course category in the program that they're on. And there's a whole load of accounts which we'll look at in a sec, and course in there, of course. Over here, we just have a resource allocation model, which is showing us, this is on the capacity side. We know there's a certain number of contracted presentation hours that academic staff have, so we're holding it as under dimensions here, the academic staff, and we're holding a whole load of features which we'll look at. And this is driven by enrollments, because as we bring in the demand in enrollments, we push that through into the resource allocations, so that we can actually link the two together and see the impact. Hopefully that's just given you an overview there. So I'm going to start in an income statement, and I just will show you a couple of things first. Before we look at this, let me just bring your attention to a key dimension of this system, which is your business organizational structure. Completely customizable and scalable to whatever you have. So in here you can have campus, and so here we just have a high level consolidated, and then we're down to like the faculties. We have, for instance, departments, whether it's maths and physics, and then within these we can see the courses which is down at the bottom level. So we're in, for instance, a P&L at the Marketing 102, Consumer and Buyer Behavior. And just to make a point here, this model has the ability, or does understand, that someone that enrolls in trimester 1 for 102, we know that we're holding that a prerequisite to this 201 here is 102. So we can actually build out the enrolment for trimester 2 based on the current enrolment pattern. And again, using an assumption to say, well, maybe not 100% of them will continue, but we'll say 80%. So it's all going to be driven automatically, everything through the model. Also, just at the top here, you can see we can hold versions of data. So we have actuals. So we need to feeding actuals to be able to overlay the plan and see how it's going. We have this targets version, which I've just discussed. This is the initial one before we start the plan. And then we're going to have a forecast version, which is halfway through the first trimester, where we've pulled in the actuals we're already starting, and then that's starting us getting to the next trimester. So down on the left, I've just got a very abbreviated chart of accounts, but you can see the different sort of income types here. This is a funded amount there from the tech. We've got the different student fees, domestic, international, and executive, and they're all driven. These can't be entered into. So we'll see the underlying models here, which are driving this shortly. But if I move down to, for instance, cost of goods sold, you can see we've got this little symbol in the corner of purple. It means there's a formula, so it's not being entered. It's been driven. And the same as course materials here is coming in from somewhere. So course materials, again, and staff costs are volume driven. If we have a rate, we know the course materials. I'll just bring that up now. Under sheets, course material costs, for instance. So we're holding in here, for instance, the cost for each course there, as we expect to be. So again, some courses might hold higher ones than others. Again, it's just a lookup cube, but it's pulling through that rate there and calculating by volume. And I can look at that with the formula in there and see that formula. And in this case here, we can see, yep, we've got our course material cost there, which we held there, and we've got the volume here, and it's EFTs for New Zealand, but it's based on the number of enrollments there. So it's a rate times a volume. So that's a dynamic number there. It will always update based on the latest numbers and give us a kind of cost. I've also attributed here a direct cost, and this will go back to our capacity resources model in a bit, but I'll just show you the formula here. But what we're saying is that based on the number of enrolled people in here, we again will get to see a staff rate that we're going to say, they're we're holding a certain rate they're at. And in this case here, it's $69 per hour, and we've got 5 presentation hours that are driving that. So it's all driven, pulling from our salaries themselves. And we have some other ones here, for instance, a commission to education agents. Again, you can just see the formula at the top here, but you can see we have an assumption of 5% in this case based on the fees from Students International. Okay, so there you can see how we're building up over the weeks, if needed, or months, and right out into the future to here, in this case, just by one course, but this will roll up completely to the top. So I'm just going to jump in through to the models now. Just run through the top here. You can see I'm just going to go through these tabs, and then we'll finish. And I'm going to just look at a dashboard example to start with, just not to really dazzle you necessarily, but that's obviously we'll want to do that. But really, you can see the underlying data and how it's structured. You can see here, this is a funnel of our incoming CRM systems here. So we can actually get a picture of, those coming from the website hits. Remember, we've got these assumptions in here and the assumptions down to, the offer of place, and finally any withdrawals that might be in there at that stage. So I'll just go now and look at, you can see what multiple tabs which can be given to different groups like marketing and specific areas like resource or rooms, finance, but I'm just going to go to enrollments because that's a key part of what you're looking at, and you can see how we can get some different types, because remember, we're forecasting these here. We're forecasting, for instance, 1842 that are offer a place that are actually going to enroll. And I just want to show you how that data hangs together by drilling down on this one here. This is an enrollments again, and we can see there's an amount for trimester 1, but there's a variance here of 318 because in this model we have brought through actual data, so we are actually able to now see the variances coming along, and we can see a bit of a trend going on. We haven't got much coming in the future because I haven't built the model out fully into that, but let's have a look at this. This is a enrollments drill down, and that's in revenue. So we're going to start, and we'll just say, you can see the different Graham stage and funding category and so on. So we're going to start off and just say, break that down by course category. And we know that certain courses have more enrollments than other ones and attract more funding than others. So we'll just say, okay, let's go down that by student type. We'll get that domestic and international. We'll just go down international buy. Now we want to see this now to the program level, and we'll see this kind of mix here. And again, I'm just really showing you how it's broken down, but underneath program, we're now going to show the levels. So it's in commerce, as you can see there, go down through that tree into marketing, and finally you can see the different course makeups of there. So that drill down just really shows you, you can drill down any way you like, but it just shows you how the data underneath it is hanging together and working along. Just jump through finance. Again, really just showing you how the data is hanging together, holding targets and actuals in the system, and projected revenue by art, commerce and science faculties, and then broken down by the different funding types. Similar over here, but just a different view, and enrollments by program. So obviously many different type of views. And so we have a view of the staff because we have pulled through the staff and we're holding assumptions on the staff. So the first one here, we're looking at staff utilizations at this stage of the plan. So as we said, we can have the bottom up forecast being brought through by the website hits, but we also need to overlay there the actual forecast that we expect to get, like a target, so we can meet up, meet top down. But at this stage here, you can see obviously a mix of utilizations. The data is not very clean. So Don Draper's at 200% utilization, not 2000, by the way, it's 200. We can see them all there. And on the right hand side, staff capacity, you can see the purple line is showing us the number of presentation hours used, and the green line is how many available, because we calculated, you've got 15 hours per week and you've used 5, so we can actually see there where the capacities are. And obviously there's, at this point here, he's gone negative, so they've actually used him for more than he can provide. Different areas there, but I'll just jump to a forecast here. The reason I put to a forecast at this point here is because we're looking at a point of time from the beginning of trimester 1 before we'd started the plan, and then we'd moved forward. We've got forecasting here where we've actually moved forward with actuals, and we can see there's not too great differences at this point here. We didn't build this enough down, but we can see that there's variances there, trimester 1, reference and comparison. There's a variance, and that's how we get from the beginning to where we are now. I'll just try going down into a lower level from here because I can see if we can see a better view. I'll just choose, say, marketing level and total, and now we can see, how it's actually moving across based on the actual different courses we got at the level of marketing. We're now going to move to the next ones are the modeling side. So we've looked at income, we looked at the model overview, we looked at just some dashboards, and we're going to start with assumptions. Assumptions is where you really start with everything, and this is where you set things up and say, okay, we are setting up our plan and we're putting in assumptions based on our predictions. So what we're saying here, for instance, for trimester 1 is that if we have 600 website hits, then we're expecting 30% to convert. Might be too high, but the thing is you can test and validate these as you go along. We've got withdrawal rate assumptions, and again you can validate that against actuals, and you can see some other assumptions, returning assumptions, and also I've just got some strategic drivers where we would say plan and at a high level, like for instance, what's the mix of domestic and international that we're expecting or planning to achieve, and how do we want the mix of course types which attract different funding. And when you put these in, we can actually drive a revenue and funding amount, both fees and funding, really clearly before you start your plan. So there's some kind of mixture there. So now we're going to just go back to the model overview. We're going to look at this enrollments forecast and then a couple of the models and lookups that feed into it. If we come enrollments forecast here, we're in a sheet which is actually like a huge pivot table, and what we can see here first of all is we've got this planned at many different dimensions. We've got our structure here with the top level. Now we're looking at one of the courses, we've got the student types and categories in here, and so at this level, looking at trimester 1, we can see here we've got these figures coming through from our CRM, from our website hits and so on down the funnel, and then we are using our assumptions to drive the forecast enrollments, as you can see here, based on the different categories that they're in. And we're coming up with a total forecast at this stage of 1031. We've also forecast withdrawals here. This is a total number. Because it's New Zealand in this case here, we've converted it to Fs, as we can see there. And then using the funding rates, remember the funding rates are kept at funding rate lookup. We can actually have a look to see how we are holding those rates. And as you can see here, we've got two rates types, which is for the funding for the tertiary education and what actual student fees are. And so we can see for by trimester, for domestic, for international, and so on, what they are. So that looks up and drives our revenue. And just to show you the forecast, I've just swapped this out from targets to the forecast version, and now you can see the green, because the green is actuals, has moved forward compared to this one here. This one is for our initial targets at the beginning of the year. This is all forecast. Then we move to our forecast one now, which is halfway through trimester 1, and of course trimester 1 has been finalized, so we actually have the actual enrollments, and now we're looking at website hits and so on for trimester 2, again at each of the different levels in here. Next, we're going to look at resource allocation, and what we can see here is a pretty comprehensive view of the kind of metrics we can hold against each of our academic staff. And we, again, as we discussed before, we have an assumptions here around contracted presentation hours, and for instance, how many have been used. So Ada here has used 5, so we have 10 available. And therefore, we're saying, based on the rate of the academic staff, that equates to 250 of direct, which is based on 5 hours, and 500 unrecovered, we've called it. In other words, what we yet haven't. And again, that we can feed those through to our P&L and see how much of our staff costs we're recovering, because of course you have to pay your staff costs regardless of how much direct they have. So we're working out utilizations, as you can see here as well. And this forms a great picture for us and a great source of reporting. So I'm now going to jump to the, so we've looked at these models here, as you can see there, both the demand side, the revenue, and the cost side in this resource. We can have a cost against our staff. We're now just going to discuss integration, because integration is how do we get this data from our CRMs and so on coming in. And as we see here, I've just got integration tasks. So this tool will just run these tasks and pulling in from the different systems. They can be a direct connection, or we can have a two-step process if necessary. But when we do that, we run the tool here and it will just pick the data up live and import it in, which is a key thing, which means we really have a live model based on the latest numbers. That can also be scheduled to run, so it can be scheduled every night, every weekend, or whatever, and there's no schedule on these, but this is the way we get the data in and pull the data from the different systems to get our full picture for finance. As we said there, the data's in the systems, but finance don't have a need to use that or repurpose that data for their own needs, and be able to then advise the business as to what's going on and what actions they may need to take, because we've got a tool like this. So finally, just a little bit on reporting. Again, I've just a few samples. We can get very nice looking reporting. This is just a bit of a dump view, but just to show us our EFTs or enrollments by course across the business, all rolling up. Another one here is just a sample of our income statement again, and you can see here this is all future forward looking. It's trimester 1, 2 and 3, which would normally be filled out more with all our costs down to EBITDA, linked to our cash flow statement. And just finally, just again a report just based on that staff resource cube that we were looking at here, showing how many presentation hours are used, what's available still, what's the total contracted, and the cost elements and utilizations. Okay, so I just wanted to run that through. Obviously, that's a half an hour there where we've just covered quite a lot. But what I'm trying to see there, and I don't think there's anything out there like this, or there isn't, which enables you to pull that data into one place, but then model it and have a framework such as this, which we built up with assumptions, which drives our forecasts and our financial forecasts, giving really accurate, up to date. So it's really looking at what's the value of that, and if you scale that across the whole organization, you can start to see how much insight you would be getting as you regularly run these. For finance, they can get their month-end reports as well. They can do board reports off of this, as well as sort of do some of this more operational stuff around the revenue and the demand side and capacity, and just seeing what would happen. And the other side is the what if analysis. Whenever you've got an assumption or rate in the system, we could say, well, what would happen if the funding rate increased by this, or what would happen if we changed our staff rates by this, or our mix between international and domestic students from 30-70 to 40-60, what would that look like? And let me see that both compared at 30-70 and 40-60. We'll see those impacts, and all the drivers, as you see, are automated, even down to material costs, agents fees and things like that. So just say thank you for attending, and this is my email address, phil.taphouse@fusion5.com.au. There's my mobile number there if you wish to contact me directly or email me. On our website, you'll see there fusion5.com.au adaptive. You'll find a bit of more information. We're going to update this in the education space, but we are committed to education. This really is for us step one. We've done a lot of research internally and with our customers and with other education institutes to come up with this. So we feel we really have a good model which can be tailored and adaptive to specific circumstances and provides tremendous value using planning technology, and it will remove what we see as a large part of your spreadsheets and ability to understand and anticipate the future and not be so reactive to things as they come along. Okay, that's all, folks. So we're just a tiny bit early finishing there, and thanks for your attendance.